good afternoon. I'm Farmer Al. I'm the farmer and owner of Frog Hollow Farm. Frog Hollow Farm is a 280-acre, mostly fruit operation here on the edge of the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta in the Great Central Valley of California. We're about an hour from the Bay Area, so it's a great climate. It's like farming in the Garden of Eden. You can just grow just about anything out here. I founded Frog Hollow Farm in 1976 when I planted my first 5 acres of trees, and that was on a 13-acre parcel of land. Now 45 years later, we're farming 280 acres of mostly orchards, peaches, nectarines, cherries, apricots, and plums, and pluots. But now we're diversifying into apples and pears in the fall. We're growing olives for olive oil, which we harvest in late October. Then in the wintertime, we're harvesting Meyer lemons, mandarins, navel oranges, kumquats. Eventually, we'll be picking something 12 months out of the year here. We're gathered here today to do an educational talk about making compost. This talk is really geared towards the young farmer or the beginning farmer or even the old farmer, the older established farmer who wants to make his own compost and maybe is not real sure about how to go about it or how beneficial it might be for his operation. Well, I've been interested in compost since I started farming, which was about 46 years ago when I was only 28 years old or something like that. Composting seemed like the natural thing to do. I started out as kind of an organic gardener, and then I transitioned into becoming a farmer. But for the first 10 or 15 years, I was a conventional grower, and then about 30 some odd years ago, I went organic because I had always felt that organic farming was the right way to go, for many reasons. Mostly, I didn't want to poison myself, I didn't want to poison my workers, and I didn't want to poison the planet. Compost has always been in the back of my mind, if not the forefront of my mind. Matter of fact, about 25 years ago, I was inspired by amigo Bob Condesano, who brought an amazing family to an eco-farm conference, the Lübke family of Austria. And I was inspired by the Lübke family and their way of making compost. And so a few years after that, after being introduced to them by amigo Bob, I actually went to Austria and spent a week in Austria studying compost, how to make compost the Lübke way. That was a very intensive scientific approach to making compost, and I never felt like I had the knowledge or the expertise or the resources to make that happen. So many years went by and I continued to buy compost. And then about 12 years ago, a gentleman named Christophe Creese and his wife Monique approached me. Christophe has a PhD in molecular biology. His wife has a PhD in microbiology. They had been studying compost under Elaine Ingham, the Soil Food Web. They came to me with the idea that they wanted to make compost on Frog Hollow Farm. We started immediately, I think the next day or a week later. Basically, it was an experiment to see if the ingredients that we had available here on the farm would make good compost. Our first compost pile was about this big around, maybe a half a ton at the most. Now Frog Hollow Farm is making, I think, maybe 3,000 to 4,000 tons a year, something like that.
Easily.
Yeah. So after we were confident that we were on the right track and we were making good compost, that's when I decided to really ramp up the operation so that we could make a lot of it. And so I invested over $100,000 in compost equipment. Now you can do it for a lot less, but on the scale that we were then operating, we were farming at that time, I think it was about 140, 150 acres. I figured that it was worth it, given the amount of compost that we were paying for it, and have it not be very good compost anyway. I figured that we could make really good compost of our own for less money than it was costing me to buy compost that wasn't very good. So we invested in this tractor with a cab and a bucket. We invested in a compost turner, which you'll see later on in the show. We invested in a compost spreader. We invested in a water tank to go behind the spreader, and we invested in a wood shredder, a very, very heavy, high-powered shredder, the kind that you see the tree service companies going around people's neighborhoods grinding up tree trunks. We have one of those, and so each one of those items was around $30,000. We invested well over $100,000 in equipment, but we're making 3,000 tons of compost a year, so it's very cost effective, and we're using all of our own ingredients. And so I want to make a comment here real quick, and then I'm going to pass it back to Christophe. Umberto is I've got 2 or 3 guys that can make compost, but Umberto is the pro. He's the guy that makes the best compost. And he's got it. He's very meticulous. He's got it down to a good system. He starts out with a layer of horse bedding, horse bedding is sawdust mixed with horse poop. He makes a layer of that, and then he adds a layer of fruit, and then he's going to add a layer of wood chips to build up the sides, and then he's going to add more layers. He keeps adding layer upon layer. So really he's making a lasagna of compost by making it in layers. And then once all those layers are built up to about 4 feet high, then he's going to come in with a compost turner and turn everything and mix it with water.
Hi, I'm Christophe, and I manage the compost operation at Frog Hollow Farm. This is a stone fruit farm, so of course there's a lot of trees. Trees like a soil that is fungal, beneficial fungi, not the non-beneficial ones, not the pathogenic ones. So we try to build a compost pile that is going to, at the end of its life cycle, that it's going to be fungally dominated. And so what we do is that we do this by volume using the front loader. The yard trimmings, the brown leaves, the branches that have been chipped with a chipper, they're brought here, and then we have during the summer we have the trimmings with the leaves, the grass, greens, the green waste so-called, and we also have landscapers, local landscapers in Brentwood who bring their tree trimmings.
Do you pay for that?
No, they bring it in. Of course, what they get is they don't have to pay the city to throw it out. So it's an advantage for them and an advantage for us. And we also have a ranch just across the highway here behind me that has horses, and so when we make piles with manure, we get the manure from them, and again, it's an exchange, a free exchange.
So you're not buying any feedstocks at all?
We don't buy any feedstocks. There's about at least 4,000 pounds from one of the coffee companies in Berkeley. They want to contribute to the farm, we pick it up, and this is all done for free. So the ratio, in order to have a compost that we want, that is mostly fungal, and that we've analyzed and that we feel is the best compost that we can use on the farm, so the ratio is 2-1-1. 2 buckets of woody material and brown leaves and things that are not green waste. Mm-hmm. Then we have 1 bucket full of green waste, which is leaves, things that are green, grasses, etc. And then we have 1 bucket of manure, or potentially 1 bucket of coffee grounds. So it's 2-1-1. During the summer we mix the green material with the fruit, and it goes in as a 2-1-1 ratio, the 1 ratio. When you're starting composting, you have to think, what do I want to use the compost for? Even without any analysis or anything like that. But do I want it to be for vegetables, or do I want it for stone fruit, or whatever? And you just have to you have to think about it, ask someone who has more knowledge than you, and just start doing it that way. So it's a crucial aspect, because if you add too much manure, you're going to have a extremely bacterial compost, and the thing will heat up, and it could cause even problems on your farm. So right here and there, it's a very simple, logical step that you have to do. After Umberto has made his lasagna, he then brings the turner. It looks like a bridge, but it has a wheel here and a wheel over there and a bridge here with a turner inside, and it'll make this trapezoidal type of structure. And he will put, using that tractor, he'll be driving along, and it'll make it into a nice surface like you see here, a nice smooth surface. So for example, this is an example, this surface is kind of rough, but after he passes the turner, it'll look like this one. The sides are nice and smooth. And he will water it with the tank, which is behind Farmer Al here. In order to be certified by CCOF or any other county organic organization, to use even your on-site compost, there's a regulation concerning the temperature cycle that your compost pile has gone through. The reason you have the regulation is the CCOF and Cal Recycle has this regulation, and the EPA, is that you want to kill pathogenic organisms, human pathogenic organisms and plant pathogenic organisms. And so this is the regulation. You have to turn the pile. First you turn it when you finish building it, because you have to mix everything up properly so that everything is evened out. Then you wait a minimum of 3 days, and the temperature has to go up to a minimum of 132 degrees Fahrenheit. And it has to stay there for 3 days at least, or more. After 3 days, you turn it, and you do that 5 times. So you can build a windrow in 15 days to a month. You have to make sure that for 3 days the temperature stays at 130 Fahrenheit or more. And you have to log that. And this is why I brought this. This is an example of what we sent in May. We sent to CCOF. And so what you have to do is you just don't measure the temperature in one spot. You have to have some kind of a statistical representation. So what I do, this is about This windrow is about 175 foot long. Every 25 feet, I measure the temperature up on top. This is approximately, it's about 6 inches into the pile here. And then I measure it on the bottom. It's about 2 feet, like that. So I measure the temperature here, and I measure the temperature here. This one is closer to the surface, this one is deeper. The reason you're doing that is you want to make sure that you measure the temperature in different areas, at the surface, closer to the surface, and deep inside, because they're going to be different. This, you're not required to do this part here that I'm going to show you, but we also measure the moisture content, because then if we know that there's enough moisture here, the next time during that life cycle I just explained, you don't have to add water. So for example here, I have this moisture meter calibrated. It's above 50% humidity or moisture content. Umberto does not have to waste water on this and time. This is the thermometers and the humidity meter are not very expensive. $200 probably for the thermometers. I think this is $150. So that's the basic, and you have an idea of what's going on in your pile. Voila.
To make 4,000 to 5,000 tons of compost, we need about 5 acres. So probably an acre per every 1,000 tons of compost. If you were, if you're just beginning, you can just, what we did at the very beginning, we were making compost along the boundaries and borders and marginal areas of our farm. We weren't devoting a whole single block to making compost, but recently we had the opportunity to rent 5 acres from a neighbor, and so we're devoting that's a 5 acre space that we're devoting 100% to compost. We're still using all the marginal spaces too. We're cramming it in wherever we can do it. There's another reason why we want to make compost ourselves, and that is that we have the materials. Otherwise, we're having to dispose through waste streams like garbage collection, a lot of stuff which or either that or burn. We used to burn our prunings. We used to bury our excess fruit that didn't make the grade. Even our used boxes. When we've reused our boxes 2 or 3 times, we then shred them and make compost out of that cardboard. What we're doing here is we are pinpointing about 30 pounds of compost on either a newly planted young tree, which needs the revitality and the ramping up of the microbe population right around the tree, or we're also targeting an area that needs to be replanted where there's no tree at all. We're going to replant that space in about a year, and so we're conditioning the soil in advance, so getting the microbes into the soil, getting the soil structure, getting the aeration, getting the good soil tilth, so that when we plant a new tree in that particular spot, it'll be really rich soil and that tree will take off very well. It'll grow well. So that's why we're doing it by hand. Whereas in an old established orchard where the trees are all, well established and growing well, we just spread it evenly throughout the whole orchard with the compost. Our compost production and compost operation is evolving all the time because of Christophe and because of the scientific knowledge that he brings to the table, but also because we're finding that it's so successful.
What we're trying out here is we're mixing it with vermicompost. Over here we have an old pile. This one is about 6 months old. And what we're trying out here is we're mixing it with vermicompost. So what we're doing is we have another area where we're making vermicompost. Again, we're following all the necessary regulation of the National Organic Program, and we grow them in these bins, these white bins behind me. So this is where we do the worm operation, and this is a very simple operation. These are macro bins. They're usually used for storing fruit, and when they're not in use, we have the worms decompose the feedstocks that we feed them. It's mainly coffee, some fruit, coffee grounds, and oatmeal, but mostly coffee and fruit. And this is very easy maintenance. There's a irrigation line. They get 10 minutes of water a day during the summer. It's sufficient. And then it's very easy to move them to wherever you want. So we brought these 10 macro bins, which are usually used for storing fruit. We brought them here, and we just tip them over, and we let the content, the vermicompost, fall out onto the pile. And then what we'll do is we're going to mix this, add a little bit of water, wait another few days, and that'll be ready for spreading. And it'll be a richer compost. This is actually the first time we've done this way. If you start an operation on a smaller farm, you can get small turners that run around $3,000 used. And I believe, I don't represent that company, but there's a place called Mighty Mike, and I think it's in Oregon. And I know they sell used ones and new ones. So with that kind of a turner, you could probably make a couple of windrows like these, but much smaller. And on a small farm, that might be enough. But you would need a chipper of some sorts, so that's an expense, and you definitely need a front loader so you don't waste time.
This compost is way better than what we're buying. It's got a lot more life to it. When you buy compost, you're buying compost that's been cooked to extremely hot temperatures, and the reason for that is food safety. You know, they're anxious to kill any microbes that are illegal under food safety rules. They don't want any lawsuits, so they overheat their compost, and so it's really devoid of any microbial life. Compost, we feel, is the heart and really foundation of the way we farm organically here at Frog Hollow Farm. We're rebuilding the soil, we're creating more life in the soil, we're creating more organic matter in the soil, we're creating better soil tilth. Basically, we're creating a soil environment which is much healthier for trees to grow in. You could say the same for vegetables. Compost is going to give you a better foundation for growing just about anything. And we've noticed after 10 years, we are beginning to notice, anecdotally, we're not doing a scientific study of it, but we've noticed that there are significant benefits to using compost with regard to disease control, pest control, water retention, water use, reduction of water usage, and there's many different benefits to using compost. We went from making a half a ton of compost on an experimental basis with Christophe. Now we're up to making 3,000 or 4,000 tons a year. We're spreading 10 tons per acre on every acre that we grow, and we are very happy with the results.